Hi, I'm Jewell Pearson, and this is my handmade home in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've lived in the tiny house for 7 years. I designed my home from graph paper and have expanded since that time and just adore my tiny house. Born in Brooklyn, didn't live there very long, but I love big buildings and mid-rises and moving traffic and people moving, and that's kind of where I feel like I get energy from. And I can honestly say I would not have been able to live in this area when I first started my tiny house journey because I was still so connected to needing that energy from the city. But over the course of 7 years, life changed, energy changed. So now being on a friend's farm is the piece that I didn't even really know I needed. So I was young, my early 20s, and the responsibility of motherhood, single motherhood. You know, at that point it was often balancing the checkbook to the penny. And I just knew that once I got her okay, I wanted to get to a point where I could decide, no, I'm going to just, buy this frivolously, not I've got to pay this bill and now we've got $20 left. Like I wanted to be in a where I've always felt like it was lighter. And I stumbled on a story of a woman who had built a tiny house, and it was her story of kind of rebuilding after divorce and losing things. And that wasn't my journey, but more resonated with me, like this is me, this is doing it for me, I'm starting over. And at that point I decided I'm building a tiny house. This was 2012, 2013-ish, and there wasn't a lot of information about tiny houses like there is now. The movement at that point was so focused on minimalism, and you don't build a house bigger than 18 feet, and there were like so many things about what a tiny house wasn't. But for me, it was my retirement plan. So I'm doing all the things. So this is the crown jewel, if I might say that. This is the original tiny house space. This is where the dream started. I knew I needed to have windows all around so that no matter where I put my house, that I'd have light coming in. A good sunrise and a sunset just like make my entire life. I've got a full-size bathroom. It's got a washer-dryer combo unit in it, a bathtub. And the funny thing is I don't use it as much as I imagined that I would. Most of the time that I use it, it's Nina getting a bath and not me. But yes, one of the important things for me, and it's one of the things that I say for people interested in tiny houses, make it your own. Make it include things that make home for you. So I have a beautiful floating staircase, and at the bottom of the staircase, there's a landing which can be used for seating. I don't have a lot of multi-function things in the house. The original flip-up desk that was in the corner in the nook, I've taken that out completely. A lot of tiny houses have storage where they'll put their clothes in the couch, and the couch lifts up and you get your clothes out. I didn't do a lot of multi-function. I wanted to think through so I wasn't moving stuff out of the way all the time and re-navigating the space, because I knew long-term that would get old for me. One overhead loft is my sleeping space, and then the other is kind of a plant nook chill space. And then coming through, pantry, storage, and then this is my kitchen, and I can cook, I just don't like to cook. So I didn't devote a lot of kitchen space, but I have a very functional kitchen. This is a microwave and a convection oven, so I can bake and do all of those things. 2-burner cooktop, and then back here is the closet. The original tiny house had a very small screened-in porch here and an overhead Juliet balcony. And so this is all new. It is built on a foundation, and this is dedicated office space, and then just having the living space and room for my plants. Really, it's a room that I built for my plants. So this is, original tiny house. This part that you see right here is original tiny house, and I didn't want to cover it up. I felt like it would be beautiful as part of the design. I don't know that I have a design style, like it's just kind of like by eye. I feel like the masks are part of who I am generationally, like the core of my existence. It's a connection, even though you don't, as a woman of color, Black woman, I don't really know my roots. That is something that I'm working on now, but it still feels like home for me. It feels like part of my connectedness to who I am, and I wanted all of that to be part of my home. So this was just like kind of the beautiful open space, and then I realized, oh, it's coyotes out here, so we need a little barrier. So that was the purpose of the screen. And I used like the polycarbonate overhead, so I still will have light in here. Right now it's my most favorite space. Maybe it's because it's the newest space.
It's okay.
So in my mind, you know, as I was thinking like the lighter lifestyle, I saw myself traveling. And I still thought I was building a tiny house space that I could travel with. And then when I bought the trailer and started building, I was like, what were you thinking? You can't travel with this. And so it is like home base. It's gonna stay stationary. It provides my lifestyle of freedom, but I still want to have the opportunity to travel with home. And so that's the travel trailer. It also has a bathroom, a shower, bathroom in it. So it's small enough that I can manage myself, but it's also big enough to be self-sufficient. So that's kind of my next project. It's all really budget driven, but I'm hoping that I can get it done by the end of this year. So advice for people who are thinking about getting into tiny house living. I think from the beginning, you need to really evaluate how you use your space, the things that you have to have in your space that are important to you. And I always say, you know, go from a list of must have, nice to have, and the wish list. You've really got to know you and know yourself and the things that are gonna make you comfortable in that space. My initial parking space was in an RV park. And I was there from May to October. RV parks aren't always safe spaces for people of color, Black people, and I ran into some issues there. And so that kind of forced the move. And I've had that issue another time in a rural space. So it's kind of, where can you put a tiny house is one of the issues, and then there's the challenge of where can you put a tiny house as a Black person, as a person of color, that you have to think about safety. Unfortunate, but the reality. There's some statistics. I think it says the tiny house movement is either 97% or 95% white. And so a lot of my work in the movement is representation, showing Black people and people of color as part of the movement, talking to the concerns that you'll have as part of the movement, in addition to just the overall, where can I put a tiny house, but what does that look like for me? And then also, I think it became important for me early on to show tiny house living as a viable option versus people just thinking tiny house people were weird. The racism in conventional home buying, it's a known issue. You can look at cities and know exactly how the redlining was done because of the way people are located, the way highways are run. At the bottom of the list for home ownership, the percentages of Black people, it still remains year after year at the bottom of that list. The conversation around tiny houses is one of the things where it's an opportunity to get to home ownership quicker. It is an opportunity for wealth building, even if it's not the traditional equity in your home conversation that so many people say. You know, buying a conventional home allows you to build equity and a tiny house doesn't. But there's still the opportunity of, I own my home, and so that income that I would be using to pay for a mortgage, I can invest that, I can save that, and so there's a non-traditional opportunity for wealth building. And if we are challenging the status quo of housing with tiny houses, we should challenge the entire thing, the inequity. I want the people who have not had access to housing to be included in this conversation and to be at this table. That is kind of where I feel like what my work is.
I'm Natalie Papier, and this is my handmade home in Charlotte, North Carolina. I love meeting artists, I like connecting with artists, I like helping artists in return. I collect a lot of art. I don't ever remember a time when art wasn't my biggest love and passion and influence. My dad's an artist and he's a carpenter, and he renovated the home that we lived in, which was a big Victorian house. And it was so fun to see this mix between him as an artist and how he took that love of art into the home. We moved into our house in Oak Park, and my daughter at the time was 1, my son was 4. This is big, grand Victorian. I think we felt like, oh gosh, we're adults now. We have to like do adult things. I had all the interior walls painted some type of agreeable gray. After a few months, just like, agreeable gray doesn't agree with us. Like, we are not those people. And it just kind of set my course into what is now my career. You're starting out as a young family and we were a little housebroke. We bought the big Victorian and then didn't have the furniture to fill it. So I started experimenting a lot with thrifting and paint. Paint became my best friend. Little by little, I'd take a room at a time. I would find a piece of art and that would inspire color palettes or pattern mixing. And I got really excited about it. And I thought, why not? Why can't we do this? And once you start playing with things that really feel true to you, I think that's when your house can really sing. I started an Instagram for my new business, Home Ec, which initially started as pop-up shops. And I got a lot of people asking me for help, and it spiraled. I do art-forward design, and that's about being influenced by the art itself. And using a piece that you already have and love is inspiration for the whole room. So the art becomes a focal point, but the whole room is harmonious because you're pulling the palette, the scale, something out from it that highlights the piece. So we've been here in Charlotte for 2.5 years. This house felt grand right when you walk in. It's got all this intricate molding and the fireplaces and big windows. That to me just felt like a canvas. Right when you walk in the front door, you come into our entryway, which is kind of a funky space. So it's long and narrow, and it's hard to know what kind of furniture to put into an entryway. So I put a lot of different things in here. This is a piano by Frankie Zombie, who I met here in Charlotte. He's just such a cool guy, and I love having a piece of furniture that is art in and of itself. These huge walls with the molding were perfect spots for some large-scale pieces of art, which frames the entryway right when you come in. I have been really obsessing over Chez Dog design for a while. They do very cool lighting that are all made out of paper mache. And this piece in particular, being white amongst this blue color, it just pops. And I like the texture of it. And then coming in through here, we call this area the sunrise room. This piece of art over the fireplace is by this artist, Peter Keel. I was so into these warm pinks and terracotta colors. It's got some of the blues and teals of my vintage couch. My chair is in this rose tone. It literally is the piece in the space that the whole color palette streams from. It was kind of chaos when we first moved in, and I bought this vintage birdcage stand, and originally I was going to hang a plant from it. My son just took this and popped it on here, and I wish I could take credit for this because I thought that is the coolest way to like showcase a disco ball. I am going to take credit actually because I made you. So it's just experimenting and getting fun with it and not seeing things quite so literally. So we're coming into our dining room here, where a staple of the room is this dining room table, which was an old refectory table from a college. And I love it because it already had so much warmth and patina, and it doesn't matter if you get a watering on it. It doesn't matter if the kids draw on it and get a little paint on it. It just keeps incorporating more character into the piece. We totally changed the kitchen layout, the flow. It was closed off. It had walls and 2 doors that you needed to walk into it, instead of how now it's an open kind of donut down here. It was walls that came to about here on either side, and then double French doors. But there was no flow. The flow stopped when you got to the kitchen. And the kitchen was already dated, so it was a perfect opportunity to take it and run with it. It's a small kitchen. It's basically a galley kitchen. It feels large because of the layout itself. And I wanted to have open shelving, but open shelving can be tricky as far as storage goes. With this, we built it all into the stove surround, and it has that little Parisian flair with the unlacquered brass. I think when it comes to working with color, you have to be really intentional about how you use it so it doesn't go overboard and feel like preschool and color explosion. So it's nice to have these quiet moments, like the pale pink of the cabinetry. And then it kind of jazzes up a little bit with the art. I had already kind of amassed this collection of portraits that I really loved. And I started with a one-piece Jacques Pierre right under the light. And he felt lonely there, and it didn't feel able to fill up the wall enough. So I started experimenting with different configurations. And it ended up being something incredibly fun about this space that's so linear. It gives it a little bit of this asymmetrical moment that I have come to love, and now he gets to hang out with all his buddies. If you're just buying things that you love and you just think are cool and you would love to have them in your home, the hardest part is making a cohesive design flow throughout your home. And in this case, what I did in order to let a lot of my pieces shine is to keep the walls white. And because of the open floor plan of the downstairs, that was an opportunity to highlight a lot of my pieces and not have it feel like too much when room to room needs to kind of, speak to each other. The way I use color in this house is by defining color on the ceilings. And then I come in with this texture and pattern, and it's a lot of editing in the end because sometimes I'm like, okay, there's one too many things happening in here. When I saw this ostrich, I was just like, what is that? And I need that immediately. So this is Beyonce, my ostrich. There was a couple times when we were trying to name her, and I think my son wanted to name her Frank. I'm like, that just doesn't sound right. She needs the proper, queenly name, Beyonce. This mid-century record player is one of my favorite pieces. I picked it up at an estate sale for $150, and it was completely in working order. And now this room has just kind of become our lounge. Everybody picks their favorite records. Whenever we have a record playing, so everybody knows what we're listening to, we put it in Beyonce's mouth. She's like our DJ. Yeah, my kids hate those. Too bad. You think those are subtly terrifying? I think they're charming. So we decided to go with an Alfred Hitchcock theme in the bathroom, starting with the Psycho picture. When I saw that floor tile, it's so impactful and graphic. And in a small space like that with no windows, I really wanted something to just pop. And I just like it because it makes people giggle. Subtly terrifying. Okay, stay. Go, boy. Stay. Stay. So coming into this space, this is an adults-only chill zone. I was looking for something to cover these 2 closets because they were such a focal point. There's not much you can do. Even if you wallpaper, you're still dealing with the closet situation. So I wanted to think of something that was more unique. And I found a graffiti artist here. He was also a graphic artist, but out of work at the time. And he came and he did this and we collaborated, and it was just really fun. And he's become a good friend of mine here as well. And we kind of sparked this space off by literally stamping it with our journey that represents Chicago to Charlotte. When you talk about things that influence you, part of that to me has been movies that are scary, like Alfred Hitchcock, or a little bit of that Beetlejuice vibe. There's something about her haunted look and all of her eggs that I just find really intriguing. Right through the sitting room, you come into our bedroom area. Anytime I mix patterns, I think the most important thing to think about is scale of the patterns. Not only the colors, but you can't have big pattern, big pattern, big pattern, otherwise it feels too much. So if you break it up with smaller patterns, black and white is a great way to ground a space, and then you can add a little bit more in without it becoming completely overwhelming. All right, so now we're going into my daughter Maddie's room. She's 10. She's got a pretty cool space in here, but we want to still keep it young and fun and vibrant with some fresh colors. Sometimes it sparks my creativity to get more hands-on. Maddie's bedroom has this fireplace and it's very, very pretty. And we have the room painted this very pale kind of mint color. And I went in one day with this idea to just paint some poppy flowers on there. And I didn't even think too hard about it. And I think sometimes for me, that was my biggest issue, is sit in front of a canvas and feel so much pressure to make something amazing. And I didn't feel that. I just wanted to bring joy into my daughter's room. I always think it's important for little girls to have good role models that are women. And I wanted her to feel surrounded by this like gaggle of empowering women, but they're also fun and they're quirky and they're colorful and they all have their own personalities, just like our kids do. She wanted a beach theme. I'm like, I'm not gonna put palm trees on your wall, but I'll definitely get you the shell chandelier. That was on sale. This started out as a craft room until the pandemic went down. Now it's kind of multi-purpose office space. The kids did their schoolwork here. We still use it as a craft space. Obviously, with any good craft space, you have to have a beverage fridge. The ceiling color that we brought into this space is called Dynamic Blue. And it was inspired by my buddy here, the Marlin, who we picked up in an estate sale. My husband and I walked out like holding him on either side. It was like our big catch. Now he graces the wall and tries to not to impale people as they walk in the room, you know? They're just like pieces that have a story, and it's not just, I picked this up at West Elm. It's like, no, I met this family. This was their grandmother. It's just, you keep getting that history passed down and it becomes part of your home's own story. In my head, when I moved into this house, I envisioned it looking like an art gallery. And it kind of has taken that on, but more in a, we also live here kind of way.
I'm very detail obsessed. I love accessories. I love the small bits and bobs, and I think the devil's in the detail, and that is both true in my home and also in my work. Hi, I'm Eric Kenneth Stolberg, and this is my handmade home in Los Angeles, California. I'm an interior prop stylist, which basically is like a set designer, but on a much smaller scale for interior projects. What made me want to move into this apartment in particular was the fact that it was untouched. It kind of felt like this time capsule, and all of the original details had been preserved, like the crown molding, the original tile, the French windows in all the spaces. It has so much character and so much, history that I immediately fell in love with it. And besides, the price was right, so I couldn't say no. So one of the great things of this apartment is there's this entryway that is like half indoor, half outdoor, but has this amazing skylight. And so it was completely underutilized, and I started to fill it with plants and more plants and more plants. And eventually I kind of have this wonderful atrium, which is so nice with all of the Spanish tile and the wrought iron, and I've added some kind of Spanish elements like this tile and this planter that add to, the old world charm of this building that I just immediately fell in love with. And I think it's a good, precursor to the apartment, coming up these old terracotta tiled stairs and having all of these old plant stands. Everything's wrought iron and has a good Spanish feel to it. I think it's a good little appetizer. Come on in, welcome to my living room, which is typically the most used room in my house. It gets the best light, so I will say plants are pretty successful around here. But what I love about this room is this lime green, key lime custard color. It's almost like a jade. And it has brought all of the hues that are in this space like forward. It's very saturated, and then you have all these rich woods, and I just think there's really good balance. My living room is the room I definitely spend the most time in, and I think it's because there is these amazing bookcases in it that are just filled with so many memories, and it kind of feels like this library of my life. And I think being in this room so often really is enriching. Definitely has more of an older character than some of the other rooms, and I'm loving that distinguishing difference between some of the spaces. Yeah, it's definitely the room I entertain the most in as well. This is typically meant to be a coat closet, but when I moved in, it is so big that I knew it had a bigger purpose. So this is actually where I keep all of my accessories. It is filled from the floor to the ceiling with nothing but accessories. I have, a vintage purse rack. I have all my shoes. I hung this big cable with all of my silk scarves. I brought in this dresser, which actually was in my mother's nursery as a child. And the drawers had been all dinged up, and so this part was good. The surface, I just wanted to kind of give the drawer fronts a refresh. So I painted them in a pattern similar to the three-legged chair just outside it. So there's a little connection there. And each drawer has a different accessory. Earrings, bracelets, belts, purses, sunglasses. So this is kind of like Grand Central Station of fashion in my home. I think taking what I saw, the couple that lived here before had their bicycles in it. It was just such wasted space, and I completely, retrofitted it for my needs, and I think that's the best DIY that has been the most successful. Most important room in the house. Here's all the jewels. This is I guess my version of a hallway, even though it's not much of a hall, it's its own little room. And I think most people would probably do absolutely nothing to this room. And of course, I have fully committed myself to decorating this place. I recently just painted it this dusty lilac, and I had my friend Issa paint these trompe-l'oeil style ribbons with bows at the top, all in different hues. It has added so much whimsy to this space, and it just makes me smile so much, which is great to have it in the center of the house. Kind of leads you into each space, which I think is a good transition. This is my tiny little original tiled, original pedestal sink bathroom that, isn't much, but when I moved in here, the walls were painted a chocolate brown, which when you have this kind of canary yellow tile is so bizarre. This is probably the second room I painted, and it was kind of a no-brainer because you can see there's all these original fixtures. The towel bar, the soap holder, there's a little toothbrush holder. All of those things had this really good teal, this bright, almost an ocean teal. And so I painted the walls that to bring all of those elements forward. And it worked like such a dream. And yeah, I always try to make sure there's plants and life in there because you don't want things to be too sterile, especially in a bathroom or a kitchen. There's some ugly pipes and wiring down underneath the pedestal sink. So all I did was bring in some plants down at the bottom, and it definitely looks a lot more homey. And now I take you into the pink parlor, which is, you know, a dining room, essentially. It's, you know, very prissy pink, and it's where I do the majority of my hosting. I love to set a table, so that's always a good opportunity for me to really impress. And it kind of feels like the most glamorous room out of all of my apartment. I think it definitely has the most jewelry in it. There's tons of brass, tons of bright colored glass, the pink elements, and I think that always is crowd pleasing for anyone I have over. Let's go to the kitchen. I would definitely say the kitchen is my least favorite room, mainly because I hate to cook. But I will say I have done enough cosmetic opportunities in there that have made it not a terrible place to be, and I think most people find it charming. I definitely leaned into the kitsch vibe with the 1930s Wedgwood stove that's original with the apartment. Something I love is the original tile. Like in the bathroom, we have this really nice canary yellow, but then there's all these green accents, and I didn't love the forest green with the yellow. It actually is my high school colors. Go Mustangs. And I was just trying to like break that up a little, so I am confusing the eye by bringing in other shades of green throughout, and I think that kind of helps make it more of an ensemble piece. Welcome to my bedroom, which is probably my favorite room in the house. It recently got a refresh, and I just think it really speaks to my personality, because even though, you know, it's a pretty neutral bedroom, you know, if you look at it, the foundation of the room is white, the bedding, the walls, the furniture, and then I brought in all of these like really saturated colors in the accessories. As you can see, the pillows are like an array. I have this vintage quilt on the foot of my bed that was my friend's grandmother's. That just brings in such a good hue. Yeah, and I just think it adds so much personality while still being calm and not crazy or antique. And it feels a lot more contemporary than a lot of my other rooms, which I obviously love the old stuff, but there's something about these lines that make it feel a little more modern that I'm really enjoying. So it is really peaceful, and I think it's like my little solace in a world that is layered and abundant and vibrant. Now probably my favorite part of this space, and rightfully so, it's what I, you know, go to bed at night and wake up to every morning, is this collage wall, which is kind of like a gallery wall, but I have layered art on top of other pieces. And it looks trickier than it is. I basically just found the longest nails I could find, which are like that big. And, you know, kind of had to artfully do it, but I love how it just feels super layered and collected. And kind of the through line of all these pieces is both black and white photography and objects. I like bringing in, you know, some 3D images or 3D items into this, because I think that again adds to that like 2D, 3D that we're playing with. One thing that every home needs is soul. I want to walk into a place and know exactly who lives there just based on how it's furnished. That says so much about a person, and if you're not bringing in elements of yourself or that mean something to you, it doesn't matter if it looks nice. It'll look stale and stiff, and I think soul is really the most important thing someone can have in their home, because only you can create it for yourself. And it's so powerful to have a space that reflects who you are. It's really energizing and rejuvenating, and I absolutely would recommend, you know, digging into the soul of your space.
Hi, my name is Julian, and this is my handmade home in Brooklyn, New York. It's funny, growing up in the suburbs, my mom and my dad, they would always sit and watch HGTV. You know, my parents are the ones who like inspired me to really like embrace the DIY stuff. There's no specific roles growing up in my parents' household. Everybody did something, you know, whether it was the dishes, laundry, taking out the trash, nobody had a set job. And so I embraced that as I got older, because a lot of guys are a little iffy about like, oh, making their space look nice. And I was taught like, you need to make your home your home. I had an interest in DIY from a very young age, but then at the same time, I really had an interest for like entertainment and media and, you know, just being in front of the camera and having that personality. When I walked in here, it was all white. It was truly a blank canvas. Like, here, do what you want. And I'm like, word. So that's where you see the stencil work that I did, all hand painted, which I'm very proud of, only because I am not an artist. I do not consider myself a designer, an artist at all, and I really just took my time. So obviously I started off with a primer just to really have a nice clean base to work with, and then I just took some black paint and a somewhat dry, hard bristle brush. You know, I just took my time and just went one by one, and I'm very happy with the shapes. I knew that I needed something right here because I, you know, installed this bar cart after I did, you know, the stencil and everything, and this was like so much. This space just seemed like so empty. So I found this mirror online, and there is a color. I actually learned about it from HGTV online a while ago. It's called paint blue, right? And in the South, especially on like, you know, the East Coast of like Georgia and South Carolina, the Gullah Geechee culture, they paint their porches a baby blue. So I felt like adding like a paint blue to, you know, a cloud mirror kind of paid homage to my Southern roots a little bit. I always thought of myself as a plant guy, but in reality, I am not. I will buy a plant and, you know, 3 to 6 months later, it's no longer with us, and I'll just end up with empty vases in plant pots. So that's what's happening over here. I've never been a figurine kind of guy. My mom collects tons of like porcelain, not porcelain babies, but like, you know, different like porcelain figurines, and that's really never been my thing. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, I have like 6 of these pieces. Like, when did this happen? It's like over the years, they just like, they literally collect.
How is it living by the train?
I love it. Yeah, it's almost like white noise to me. Like, I can fall asleep with ease. My mom, she's really big on rugs. It's like rugs everywhere. She invests in rugs. And, you know, I remember having so many restrictions in the house growing up about like, you know, oh, don't step on that rug. Oh, don't go in that room with that rug. And so like, once I, you know, got my own place, I'm like, I'm kind of like over rugs, you know. But then I did realize like, one, they do add a pop of color, especially when you know, when everything is white. It is a really good way to kind of, you know, add some depth, texture, and color to your space, but also it does serve a function. Rugs and any kind of textiles, honestly, will just help dampen the sound like that. Again, when you don't want it to come, it will just keep going. You know, this is a bachelor pad and therefore a bachelor kitchen. This is all for show. I think the moment where I really started to get serious about just creating, you know, DIY videos and just really trying to experiment was in the kitchen. And that was with this backsplash. They always recommend like the peel and stick tiles, and I'm like, that's little kid stuff. You know, I want the real deal. So I decided to actually, you know, like get some mortar and just like slap it on the wall and tile a backsplash. But this was my first time doing that, and it was my last time doing it too. I'm not doing that again. It did not turn out as well as I thought. However, it turned out not bad for my first time. All right, so I'm really, really embarrassed about this. Like, I'm sure like my parents are gonna see it and be like, oh dude, we taught you better than that, you know? Some frozen fruit mostly for smoothies I had every intention to make. I just never got around to it. Some eggs, some water, some old hummus, some oat milk, and 1 yogurt. The bachelor diet, you know? It's bad. I have a weird style, you know? I have an eclectic taste in pop culture and interest, but also culture specific to Brooklyn. So again, that's where you have like lyrics from like Lil' Kim and pictures of like, you know, Jay-Z and Diddy, and obviously Biggie up there. I would recommend for everyone, if they want to do a gallery wall, is to start off with an anchor piece. Whether that is a frame or a clock. In the instance for my gallery wall, it was a picture ledge. I didn't want to just slap some frames on the wall. I wanted to add some depth to it. I wanted to be able to show off my personality to it. So I started off with the picture ledge, and then because this wall goes up to my room, I knew that I could throw a mirror up there on top of my dresser. So I knew that the dresser would be an anchor, the mirror would be an anchor, and then to meet it halfway from the top to bottom, the clock. Unlike downstairs where I was able to kind of like have some fun with it and be creative, I kept it very symmetrical, not just in terms of like the frames and the layout, but also like the color palette. I think it all flows really well. Fun fact, this apartment actually used to be a retail store. And then my landlord bought it in like the 80s or 90s and converted it all into like residential like lofts. So there is no built-in closet space in pretty much any apartment, but especially this one, hell, there's not even really full walls. So which is why I had to create a partition wall. I felt quite uncomfortable having like an open wall in my bedroom. I wanted a little bit more privacy, and I was quite intimidated with this DIY. I just knew it required a lot of measuring and a lot of cutting, and that's just something I wasn't familiar with. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than what it was, and I am very proud of, you know, how it came out, especially with these like little cutouts where I can put plants in it. My work is very creative, from, you know, writing campaigns and pitches, but also to like making videos for social. And I just really needed a space that allowed me to create, despite this being like my office and, you know, serving a purpose for work and creativity. I really wanted my personality to come through somehow, my playfulness to come through somehow. And I figured, you know, why not throw a big cat on the wall? When I moved in here, the bathroom was horrible. It was very pink, very retro. I couldn't even tell you what decade it came from, but it was nasty. So everything in my bathroom, right down to the paint, right down to the floor, to the hardware I installed. Like, I installed a faucet. I've never done that before. I decided to keep the pink tile because it just would have been too much to paint over. Also, I'm realizing like pink tile is like, it's kind of a rarity. There's a whole community online dedicated to preserving pink tiled bathrooms. However, I did decide to, you know, add some depth to it by, you know, incorporating some black accents and hardware. I even spray painted my shower matte black, and then I added another gallery wall because that's clearly my thing. That's my signature. And I found out that you could actually paint floor tile, and there are kits out there available to allow you to do that. It's just very important that you follow the steps and follow the instructions exactly. And as mentioned, I've been doing DIYs for a while now, and that is the one thing that I have learned. And I am a very impatient person. I would always cut corners, but now I'm at a point where I know not to do that. And it paid off because I am very proud of the floor and the way it turned out.
I think of myself as this weird mix of Willy Wonka, Martha Stewart, and Oscar Wilde, kind of all of if they had a baby together. Hi, my name is Jason, and welcome to my handmade home in Minneapolis, Minnesota. You know, I'm a little left of center and I like to do things that are driven by imagination and creativity. I love the Victorian times and things that are historic and beautiful, but I also really respect, you know, what Martha's brought to the world in terms of hospitality and having people in your home and treating them warmly. I would refer to our style is classic maximalist. So it's taking classic design or historic design and putting that on top of things, on things, on things. It really fills my cup in terms of like what I love about history and the origin of things. Whenever people walk in, the first thing that they notice is the kitchen. We designed our kitchen to emulate a pre-war apartment in New York. We've got this really wonderful entertainer's corner. And this was a big change for us because it used to be a breakfast nook. So what we really love is that we've made everything visible to all of our guests who come over so that they can help themselves. When I think about hosting, I think of it as creating a moment or atmosphere for people who are coming to be with me or with me and my partner. Cooking people's favorite dishes or putting it on your grandmother's tray or any of those things. Like someone might have given you a candle and we all have that shelf of candles that people have given us. But like I'll really try to take note of who gave me those candles and if they're gonna be there that night to put it out and light it. To me, that's what intentional hospitality is all about. We had these hutches designed specifically for our kitchen and we wanted some really great details, like this fluting on the side. We wanted really nice, open, wide spaces, and we wanted lighting within so that we could highlight all of our great pieces. What I really like to do is add a little bit of color and a little bit of cat in order for us to be able to get. So Franklin's the troublemaker of the house, and if there's anything he's not supposed to be in or anywhere he's not supposed to be, that's where he shows up. What we love about using these cabinets is that we're mixing together our whiteware with a little bit of color. This really helps, as you'll see as we move into other areas of the home, to carry color through. In a kitchen that has a lot of glass and a lot of white, bringing color in is one way to help people really see the differences in what you have in your cabinets. So I've done it in a few ways. One way is by using flowers, which are really important to me. So here I've dried some roses, I have a straw flower and a little leaf, bringing just a little bit of green and a little bit of pink into the kitchen for spring. Your sofa, your tables, those things go through what a friend of mine calls the patina of life. They just get schmutz on them, like they get messed up, and they're things and they can be replaced. But in our home, you don't touch the walls because these things are cherished. One of my favorite pieces on this wall is this press for champagne button. Let's give it a shot. Not working today, clearly, because there is no champagne. Now, my mom would have loved that joke, and here she is. So this is a painting of my mother when she was 19 years old and a summer camp counselor. This was a black and white photo that my friend Nick painted into a beautiful color portrait. And we're thrilled to have it on the walls here. And she's sitting right above how he imagined me as 7 years old. I didn't wear glasses when I was 7 years old, but this is how he imagined me with my former cat, Celexa, that, yes, was named after an antidepressant. So many things in our home have a story, almost everything. In fact, we kind of don't give something pride of place in our home unless it really does have a story, even if it's silly and kooky. This gallery wall was assembled by myself with the help of a friend, because you always want a second pair of eyes when you're doing a project like this. Things don't have to be perfect in your home. If you think they have to be perfect, it can be really hard to do a gallery wall. I just try to get them well spaced and level. And if I've done that, that's success. In a time where we're so bombarded with so many things and serious things, I just love that I can kind of turn in any direction in my home and see something that puts me at ease and kind of creates this sanctuary that we live in. So this is our prized 250-year-old whale vertebrae. We picked it up on a Sunday afternoon, as all of you do as well, and we brought it home and gave it a perfect place here in our home. What's really cool about it is it's a piece of natural history, but it's also a piece of art, and it's a really great conversation starter. I share this space with Chad, my partner of 10 years, who I love so much. he isn't here right now. He's working, and yet he is also here because this painting, this cubist style painting over my shoulder is a painting of Chad. And so while not planned by any of us today, he is truly here with us at this moment, which I think is fantastic. We also have some other favorite artists that we found on Etsy and other places, and tying in other subject matter of nature. So I really love that we've got the antlers, and then playing into the floral elements, we've got some plates, some irregular, some symmetrical, but they're all bringing that sense of bloom to the wall. My favorite spot in the home is a corner gallery wall that we have in our living room. And sometimes people don't think about doing a gallery wall that wraps the corner, but it's a lot of fun creatively to think about that. So there's some things that I'm especially happy with over here. One of my favorite things to do is to frame some dried botanicals, which you're seeing up in the back over there. But I also really love to arrange with dried botanicals. Got some dried roses, some peonies, some amaranth, and these incredible tulip magnolia branches, which unfortunately didn't bloom, but I still found a use for them in the long run to give some really great movement and gestures to this arrangement. I think having a really nice large piece is fantastic, even amongst all the other layers. That's what classic maximalism means to me. You can have layers on layers, and it just builds interest, and it gives people a reason to come over and look at all the details. This particular bowl I love. It's from Afghanistan, and it's been repaired many times over the years. It's a really old bowl, but it just reminds me that we can get more use out of things than we would really think. And so this bowl, who knew it would end up in my home as a decorative piece holding some African trade beads, but it'll be something that I treasure, and I'll make sure to pass it on to somebody else. It'll have a very long life in the long run. And speaking of long lives, my very favorite bowl of all, this little guy is from a shipwreck, and it was bought from the bottom of the ocean up for us to enjoy. It was part of a collection from a store named Prize in Kansas City that I love to go to, and I was able to pick out one of these very expensive investment bowls that came from the bottom of the ocean. You know, we all have our own personal style. I've been able to kind of pick and choose these things that feel really me. Velvet is one of my very favorite fabrics. It comes and goes in popularity, but I love it all the time. And then, you know, it's fun to throw something less expensive and fun like this monkey business into the middle of all of it. It isn't really about being serious all the time, but if you have a unifying fabric like velvet and some unifying trims like this camel color and the gold trim on the pillow, all of it works together. This main bedroom is the most recent thing that we've worked on, and we're really happy with how it turned out. It took us a while to figure out what color we wanted this room to be, but I love green, and I especially love aged green. And then we've added to the green levels of gray. Green and gray are really interesting because they actually cross a lot in a lot of colorations. So just like all of the other rooms, we have a gallery wall in our bedroom. And this one we wanted to approach in a slightly different way. We have a very dear friend, and her name is Mary Jo Hoffman, and she's an incredible photographer. And what she does is every day of the year, she takes a beautiful picture of nature on a completely white background. We decided to tie together Mary Jo's photos and the subject matter of the photos with different styles and types of art to really play that out across the whole wall. So she shot some beautiful pictures of eggs in a nest, and we have similarly gone after a woodcut piece of art from someone we found on Etsy that has the same subject matter. She also did this beautiful photo of a thistle, and within this collage of different types of botanicals, we see that thistles are prominent as well. But it doesn't stop there. Each piece has a relationship. So if you look at the wings of the butterfly, I looked at the density of the black and white in the pattern. And if you kind of squint your eyes and look at the wings of the butterfly and look at this beautiful picture here, you're getting the same kind of effect. It's these little tiny details that I think about and that I care about that maybe somebody else doesn't notice, but it's what makes this wall intentional and special to me. And to me, it makes my home a warm place that people want to be. This has followed my journey as I have grown from a career in consulting to visual merchandising to designing for a Fortune 50 company. And now I have a side business called Warm House Story, and that is about hosting warmly, living beautifully, and making moments together. The place that this came from is the life that I live here, which is making an intentional place where people feel welcome and they can come and enjoy their time with me and my partner. And I'm really excited to share with others tips on how to achieve a great atmosphere, one that lets people know that you see them and you've planned for them, and that they have a place in your home or in your life. When I look at my style, I feel like I'm being seen for the full person that I am. People can choose to love it, They can choose to just acknowledge it. Maybe it's not for them, but it doesn't matter because I know that it's what's important to me. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Handmade for more home tours like this.